My name is Yvonne Tate, and I was 63 years old the night my daughter looked me in the eye and said, "Mom, I think it's better if you don't come in." I was standing on her front porch holding a casserole dish, the same dish I'd used to make her grandmother's cornbread stuffing every Thanksgiving for 40 years. My hands were shaking, not from the weight of the dish, but because I had driven 40 minutes in the rain to get there. Because she had called me 2 weeks before and said, "Mom, we're doing a big family thing for Thanksgiving this year. Make sure you bring the stuffing." And I had. I had made it the night before, got up at 6 in the morning to finish it, and driven through a storm on the interstate because I actually believed that I was going home. She didn't let me in. Her husband stood behind her in the hallway. I could hear my grandchildren somewhere in the house, hear the football game on the TV, smell the turkey. My daughter looked at the casserole dish, then back at my face and said, "We just think it's better for everyone right now. I'll call you tomorrow, okay?" Then she closed the door. I stood there for a moment. The rain was coming sideways off the eaves and hitting my coat. I looked down at the dish in my hands. Steam was still rising from the foil. I walked back to my car. I put the dish on the passenger seat. I sat there for a while before I could make myself drive. And on the way home, I did the math. All of it. Every dollar, every sacrifice. Every time I had said yes when every cell in my body was screaming no. By the time I pulled into my own driveway, I knew exactly what I'd done to myself. And I knew exactly what I was going to do next. But let me start from the beginning because none of this makes sense without it. I raised my daughter, Teresa, alone. Her father left when she was 4 years old. Not dramatically, not with a fight, just quietly, the way some men do. One day he was there, and then one day his car wasn't in the driveway, and that was that. I never heard from him again. I was 28 years old with a 4-year-old, a mortgage on a house in Columbus, Ohio, and a job as a dental hygienist that paid $19 an hour. I want you to understand what that life looked like. I worked 4 days a week at the dental office and picked up shifts on Saturdays at a second job, a receptionist position at a physical therapy clinic. Because the mortgage and the daycare together were more than my full-time salary, I packed Teresa's lunches every single day from kindergarten to 12th grade, never once buying hot lunch because it was $2 a day and I needed those $2. I drove a 1994 Civic until it had 210,000 miles on it and the heat only worked on one side. I did not take a vacation for 11 years. Not one trip, not one long weekend, not one night in a hotel that I didn't pay for with a coupon code. I am not telling you this to make you feel sorry for me. I am telling you so you understand what the money meant. Every dollar I saved was physical. It cost me something real. By the time Teresa graduated high school, I had managed to save $47,000 in a retirement account and another $11,000 in a regular savings account. That was 22 years of scraping. I was 50 years old. I was proud of it, in a way I cannot fully describe. Not because of the number, but because of what it represented. Proof that I had held on. That I had not drowned. Teresa was smart. She got into Ohio State, partial scholarship, and she called me from her dorm room the second week of freshman year crying because she couldn't afford her textbooks. They were $340 for one semester. I sent her $400 so she had a little extra. She thanked me and I felt like the richest woman alive. That was the first time. Over the next 4 years, I helped her with textbooks twice more. I helped her with a car repair when her used Corolla blew a tire on I-71. I paid her phone bill for 8 months when the part-time job she'd had fell through. Small things. Real things. I didn't keep a running total because you don't do that with your child. You just help. That's what mothers do. She graduated in the spring, got a job in marketing at a company downtown. She met her husband, Patrick, at that job. He worked in sales. They dated for 2 years. Then he proposed at a restaurant in Short North, and she sent me a photo of the ring that same night. It was a beautiful ring. I said so, and I meant it. Then she called me 3 weeks later and said, "Mom, we're thinking about buying a house. Patrick's parents said they'd help with part of the down payment, but we're still short. Could you help with the rest?" I asked how much. She said, $15,000. I was quiet for a moment. I want to be honest with you. My first instinct was not to say yes. My first instinct was a tightening in my chest, a kind of alarm. But she said, "Patrick's parents are already putting in $20,000, Mom. We don't want to ask them for more." And I heard something in her voice that I had heard when she was little. A small, careful shame, like she was embarrassed to need me. And I could not bear that sound. I said yes. I sent the $15,000 as a wire transfer on a Thursday morning. Teresa sent me a photo of the house 3 weeks later when they closed. It was a nice house. Brick front, good neighborhood, 2-car garage. She looked happy in the photos. Patrick had his arm around her and they were both laughing on the front porch. I looked at that photo for a long time. I told myself it was a loan, not a gift, a loan. She had said help, not give, and I assumed that meant we both understood it would come back to me at some point. I never asked her to sign anything. I know. 2 years later, she called again. This time it was about a business. Patrick had an idea, a mobile detailing service for cars. He'd done the research, found equipment suppliers, had a whole business plan typed up. They needed $22,000 to get started. Teresa said, "We've already maxed out what we can get from the bank, Mom. Patrick's parents already helped us so much with the house, we can't ask them again." She said it like it was logical, like it was simply the next item on a list. I said, "Teresa, that's a lot of money." She said, "I know, Mom, but it's an investment. We'll pay you back from the profits." Patrick has already talked to 3 dealerships who said they'd be regular clients. I had $38,000 left in savings at that point. I sent her $18,000. I kept the other $20,000 because I had to. I told her I needed to keep something for emergencies. She said, "Of course, Mom, absolutely." She sounded grateful. She called me the day the equipment arrived and said it was all really happening. The business lasted 14 months. I don't know exactly what went wrong. Teresa said the dealerships backed out. Said Patrick had trouble managing the scheduling. Said it wasn't the right time. I never asked too many questions because I didn't want to make her feel worse. The equipment was sold off. I don't know for how much. She never mentioned paying me back, and I, God help me, never asked. 3 months after the business closed, Patrick got a job offer in Charlotte, North Carolina. Good salary, sales management. They were excited. They called me together on a Sunday afternoon, both of them on the line, and Teresa said, "Mom, we want to move, but we lose money selling the house right now. The market's soft. Could you cover our mortgage for 6 months while we rent in Charlotte and wait for the Columbus market to recover?" Their mortgage was $1,439 a month. 6 months was $8,880. I had $17,000 left. I said yes. I want you to ask yourself something right now. Why did I keep saying yes? Because I have asked myself that question 10,000 times. The answer is not simple. Part of it was love, real love, the kind that doesn't calculate. Part of it was fear. Fear that if I said no, something would happen to her that I could have prevented. Part of it was habit. By then, Saying yes to Teresa had become the only way I knew how to be her mother. And part of it, the part I am most ashamed of, was that I needed her to need me. I'm 63 years old, and I can admit that now. The Columbus house sold 8 months later, not 6. I covered 9 months, not 6. That was $13,320. When it sold, she called to tell me. She said, "The timing worked out great, Mom." She did not say anything about paying me back. I sat on my couch that night and tried to count up what I had given over the years, and I couldn't get an exact number. But I knew it was somewhere around $50,000, maybe more. I had $3,700 left in savings. I was 59 years old. Let me tell you what 59 feels like when you have $3,700 in savings and a dental hygienist's salary, and your retirement account feels like a distant country you're not sure you'll ever reach. It feels like standing at the edge of something with no railing. Every month I paid my mortgage, my utilities, my car insurance, my groceries, and whatever was left over, I put back into savings $1 at a time and tried not to think about what would happen if my car broke down or my furnace went out or I got sick. I got sick. In October of the following year, I went in for a routine mammogram. I was 61 by then, and the radiologist called me back 2 days later. The word they used was suspicious. Then a biopsy. Then a second opinion. Then the word malignant. It was early-stage breast cancer. The treatment plan was surgery followed by 6 weeks of radiation. The surgery alone, after insurance, was going to cost me $4,200 out of pocket. Radiation was another $1,800 out of pocket. I would need to take 3 weeks off work for recovery, unpaid, because I had used all my PTO earlier that year when my own mother was in the hospital. I called Teresa the night after I got the diagnosis. I wasn't calling to ask for anything. I needed to hear her voice. I needed my daughter. She answered on the 3rd ring. I told her. There was a pause and she said, "Oh, Mom, that's scary. Are you sure about the diagnosis?" I said yes. I had gotten a second opinion. She said, "Well, early stage is good, right?" That's what they said, early stage. I said yes. She said, "Okay. Okay, so that means it's very treatable. You're going to be fine." She said it like she was closing a file. Then she said, "Hey, I have to jump off. Patrick's family is here for dinner, but keep me posted, okay? Love you." I sat with the phone in my lap for a long time after that. I did not ask her for money. I want to make that clear. I paid for the surgery and the radiation with a combination of my savings, all of it, every dollar, and a small personal loan from my credit union that I am still paying off. My neighbor drove me to and from my radiation appointments 3 days a week for 6 weeks because I couldn't drive myself after some of the sessions. My neighbor, not my daughter. Teresa called me 4 times during those 6 weeks. Each call was under 10 minutes. She asked how I was feeling, and I said, "Okay," or "getting through it." And she said, "You're so strong, Mom," and moved on to other topics. Her job, their new neighborhood in Charlotte, a kitchen renovation they were planning. She did not offer to come. I did not ask her to. I finished treatment in December. By January, I was back at work, a little tired, a little thinner, but back. I was 61 years old and I had come through something hard, and I had done it almost entirely alone. And something had shifted in me during those months. Something quiet and permanent. I had spent 30 years being the person who showed up. I had driven through storms, sent wire transfers, covered mortgages, said yes to things that made me flinch. And when it was my turn, when I was the one sitting in a hospital gown, waiting for a technician to start a machine aimed at my chest, nobody came. That knowledge settled into me slowly, the way cold settles into a house when the heat goes out. Not all at once. Quietly. The following October, Teresa called to invite me to Thanksgiving. She was excited. It was going to be a big gathering, Patrick's family and some of their Charlotte friends, and she wanted me to make the cornbread stuffing because everyone has been asking about it. She said it warmly. She sounded like my daughter, the one I remembered, and I said yes and meant it. I made the stuffing the night before Thanksgiving. I packed it carefully in the casserole dish that had belonged to my mother. I got up early to reheat it, wrapped it in foil and a kitchen towel to hold the heat, and got on I-77 South in the rain at 10 in the morning. Teresa had texted me the address 3 days earlier, a house in a good part of Charlotte. I could see it even from the outside. New construction, wide driveway, a basketball hoop in the garage bay. I parked and walked up the front path with the casserole dish, and I could already smell the turkey through the front door. I knocked. Teresa answered. She was dressed nicely, hair done. She looked at me, not surprised, not happy, something in between, and then she looked past me toward my car like she was checking whether I brought anything else. Then she said it. "Mom, I think it's better if you don't come in." I heard someone laugh from somewhere in the house, one of the grandchildren, I think, running past a hallway in the background. I said, "What?" She said, "Patrick's family is here, and some friends, and it's kind of a lot of people, and we think it might be better for everyone if we can do something. Just us, next week. I'll call you." I stood there. I looked at her face and I searched it for something, embarrassment, guilt, conflict, any sign that this was hard for her to say. There was nothing there. She looked uncomfortable the way you look when you're waiting in a long line. I said, "Teresa, I made the stuffing." She glanced at the dish and said, "Oh, you can take it home. I made a different stuffing this year." I nodded. I don't remember deciding to nod. My body just did it. I walked back to my car. The rain had picked up. I'd put the casserole dish on the passenger seat, got in, closed the door, and sat there for a few minutes with my hands in my lap. From where I was parked, I could see the front windows of the house. The lights were warm in yellow. I could see people moving around inside, someone carrying something, someone laughing. I started the car and drove home. I did not cry on the drive home. I want to make sure you understand that. I was past crying. What I felt was something colder and quieter than grief. It was clarity, the kind that takes years to arrive, and once it does, you can't unknow it. When I got home, I put the casserole dish on my kitchen counter, and I sat down at my kitchen table with a yellow legal pad and a pen, and I wrote down every dollar I could remember. $400, textbooks, freshman year. 3 more semesters, 2 more book costs. $340 car repair, junior year. 8 months of phone bills at $85/month, 680 time, $15,000, down payment assistance, Columbus house hours. $18,000 business startup, mobile detailing. 9 months of mortgage at $15,340.90, $13,320. Smaller things I'd forgotten to track over the years. Birthday money sending cards, groceries when she visited, a plane ticket I bought her once to come home for Christmas. I stopped writing when I got to $52,000. And I knew I was still missing things. I had given my daughter $52,000 over 12 years. I had done it in small pieces and large ones, always with a reason, always with a yes. I had done it while working double shifts, skipping vacations, driving a car with no heat on one side. I had done it while I was in cancer treatment and she called me 4 times in 6 weeks. I had done it and she had uninvited me from Thanksgiving. I put down the pen and I made 2 decisions. The first was simple. I was done, not done loving her. I want to be clear about that. I was done being available in the particular way I had been available. The open door. the open wallet, the reflexive yes. That version of me was finished. Not dramatically, not with a speech. Just finished. The second decision took me a few days to carry out. I called my bank and I spoke to an advisor about my retirement account. I had about $41,000 in there by then. I'd been rebuilding slowly. I moved it into a more protected account structure and I updated my beneficiary designations. I also called an attorney about drafting a simple will. I had put it off for years. The way you put off things that make death feel real? But I wasn't putting it off anymore. I also wrote Teresa a letter. Not an angry letter. I was very careful about that. I wrote it on a Sunday morning when the house was quiet and I'd had 2 cups of coffee and I felt calm. I told her that I had been thinking about our relationship and about the choices I had made over the years. I told her I was grateful for the good years and I loved her. I told her I would no longer be in a position to offer financial support. I told her that if she wanted to have a real relationship with me, Sunday phone calls, visits, the kind of ordinary closeness that mothers and daughters are supposed to have, I was here for that. But the other arrangement was over. I mailed it on a Monday. Regular mail, not certified. I didn't need proof of delivery. She would know I meant it. For 3 weeks, nothing. Then, one Tuesday evening in December, my phone rang. It was Teresa. She called twice in a row, then sent a text that said, "Mom, can you call me back? It's important." I waited until the next morning to call. She answered immediately. Her voice was tight. She said Patrick's job in Charlotte had changed, restructured. His role was being eliminated. They were going to need a few months to figure things out, and she was calling to see if I could help cover their expenses while Patrick looked for new work. She paused after she said it. Waiting. I said, "Teresa, I sent you a letter." She said, "I know. I got it. But Mom, this is different. This is a real emergency." I said, "I know it feels that way." She said, "What does that weigh?" She said, "What does that mean?" "Mom, we need help." I said, "I know you do, sweetheart. I really hope you figure it out." And I meant that truly. I hoped she would figure it out the way I had figured things out alone for 30 years. She got quiet. Then she said, "So that's it?" "After everything," I said, "I have loved you your whole life." "I still do." "That's not nothing, Teresa. That's everything." She hung up. She didn't call again for 6 weeks. When she did, it was a Sunday, and her voice was different, softer, a little careful, like she was choosing her words. She asked how I was doing. She asked about my health. She mentioned, almost in passing, that she had gotten a second job to help cover things while Patrick kept looking. I told her I was proud of her. I meant that too. We talked for 37 minutes. It was the longest real conversation we'd had in years. I don't know what our future looks like. I don't know if we'll rebuild something or if that Thanksgiving night is a door that stays closed. What I know is this. I am 63 years old and I have $3,700 in a savings account that is growing again, slowly, the same way it grew the first time, one careful dollar at a time. My retirement account is intact. My will is drafted. My house is paid off in 8 more years. And I have my neighbor's number saved in my phone under the name Gloria, friend. She brought me soup when I was in treatment. She drove me to radiation appointments. She has never once asked me for anything except company, and I have given it gladly. I cooked Thanksgiving dinner alone this year. Turkey breast, roasted vegetables, and the cornbread stuffing from my mother's recipe. Gloria came over and we ate at my kitchen table and watched the game and laughed a lot. It was the best Thanksgiving I'd had in years. The casserole dish is still here on the shelf where it belongs. I think about the casserole dish a lot. Not the Thanksgiving, not the closed door, the dish. My mother's dish. The one I carried through the rain with both hands because I didn't want it to tip. That detail stays with me more than anything Teresa said because it tells the whole story without a single word. I was still showing up. I was still carrying things carefully, and I had been doing that for so long, I had forgotten to ask whether anyone on the other side of the door was doing the same. What happened between Teresa and me didn't happen because she was cruel. It happened because I made it easy. Every time I said yes when I meant no, I was teaching her something, that my limits didn't exist, that my discomfort didn't count, that love for me had no floor. I thought I was being generous. I was actually being dishonest. Real generosity has a self in it. What I was practicing for 30 years wasn't generosity, it was disappearance. The hardest thing I've had to reckon with is that the $52,000 wasn't the problem. The problem was that I gave it without ever once asking myself whether I was giving from abundance or from fear. I was afraid she wouldn't love me if I said no. I was afraid I'd fail as a mother. I was afraid of the silence that follows a refusal. So I paid to avoid that silence over and over until I had almost nothing left. And the silence came anyway, on a front porch in Charlotte, in the rain. That's the part that takes real honesty to see. The outcome I was paying to prevent was the one I got. Because people don't learn to respect what they never have to earn. What I know now, and I wish I had known it at 50, at 40, at 35, is that taking care of yourself is not selfishness, it is the most basic form of integrity. I spent 6 weeks going to radiation appointments with my neighbor because I had emptied myself out for a daughter who called me 4 times in those 6 weeks and stayed on the phone for less than 10 minutes each time. That is not a coincidence. That is the direct result of a pattern I built and maintained. I built it. I can say that now without flinching. The strength it took to write that letter, to mail it without certified tracking, without drama, without needing her to respond a certain way, that was the first honest thing I had done in years. Not strength in the loud sense, quiet strength. The kind that comes from finally understanding what you actually owe yourself versus what you've been handing away out of habit and fear. Teresa called 6 weeks later, and her voice was different, softer, a little careful. She had gotten a second job. She was figuring things out the way I had always figured things out, alone. One careful step at a time. I told her I was proud of her, and that was true. I don't know what we're building now. But whatever it is, it's honest. And I think that's the only foundation anything real can stand on. The dish is still on the shelf. I use it every year.